Welcome back to A Slice of News, where I cut you off a slice of news. Reality star Spencer Pratt is out in the race for Los Angeles mayor. And unsurprisingly, Republicans are not taking this fact very well. And it did not take long before accusations of fraud or leftist election stealing cropped up, even before the votes were fully counted, and Spencer Pratt was already doing really badly. Once it was announced that he had been eliminated from the mayoral race, is when things really ramped up. And you had people like Speaker of the House Mike Johnson and even Vice President J.D. Vance sowing doubt on the legitimacy of the election as a whole. The Speaker of the House was quoted as saying that he felt that the counting of votes in California, quote, stinks to high heaven, and that he felt, quote, some of these efforts are so diabolical and so far upstream that it's impossible to prove, but I think everybody knows instinctively something is wrong here. Basically saying, I think election denying conspiracies just feel right. You don't need to see the evidence to believe it. And even if you did, the Democrats have it so deeply buried that it looks like there's no evidence, but there is. That's unsurprisingly a very dangerous message to be putting out, essentially saying, trust your feelings, not the reality of these elections. So when we're losing, it has to be a stolen election, it has to be conspiracy. It can't just be that we're losing legitimately. Priming his fellow Republicans to not accept when their candidate is losing definitely seems like a calculated move, especially with the midterm elections coming up in only a few months, where they are most definitely going to lose very badly. So priming them to not accept that they're losing and to believe that if they are losing, it must be because of some sort of trick or malfeasance is a bit concerning, if also not at all surprising. The vice president expressed that he felt that it was pretty shady that Spencer Pratt was not able to advance in the mayoral election, questioning how it was that Spencer Pratt was leading the third place candidate until more mail in votes arrived and he dropped to third, essentially making the argument that it was suspicious how they were winning until more votes were counted and then they stopped winning. And that didn't make sense, despite the fact that it made perfect sense because these were mail in votes, a type of voting more commonly used by Democrat voters, while Republican voters usually preferred to vote in person on election day. So, of course, the vote count for the Democratic candidates surged when more mail in votes were being counted versus the amount of votes that had already been received for the Republican candidate during the in person voting time. And maybe if the disparity was just extreme and so obvious that there was no way that it could possibly be legitimate, maybe they would have an argument. But it's only a 3 point difference between Spencer Pratt and the Democratic candidate that overtook him. It's nothing wild, nothing extreme. It's barely a 3 point difference. That's pretty normal in these sorts of elections. But the only reason they want it to be in question is because it is a difference that meant their Republican candidate is now no longer a viable one. The reality is there's really not that much to see here. This was Spencer Pratt, a guy with barely any sort of real message or solid platform, trying to win a mayoral election as a Republican in a city that went 65% for Kamala Harris in the 2024 election and is traditionally incredibly Democrat centric. A guy running on basically, you know me from TV, as a Republican, I'm going to do stuff different than the Democrats would do, and not a whole lot more. Really never had a realistic chance to get on that ballot and become mayor of Los Angeles. The reality was it was never really going to happen. He didn't have a genuine chance of making it all the way. Certainly not in liberal Los Angeles. Spencer Pratt being eliminated from the running to be LA's next mayor shouldn't surprise anyone. And I think the thing is, it doesn't. Yes, the vice president and the speaker of the house are coming out saying they think it's shady what happened there and there must be some sort of conspiracy, some sort of democratic steal of the election. But much like most Republican claims of election fraud and Democrats stealing elections away from them, it's not born out of genuinely believing that that's what happened. These election denial claims are put out there to sow doubt in the average American voter, not because they genuinely have concern over the integrity of the electoral process. They want people to see Republicans losing elections and think, huh, that's weird. something must be up, not, they must have lost because they were the lesser of the two candidates, and the Democrat won because they were the one that more voters actually wanted to win and serve time in that position. Continuing to push that narrative that a Republican loss is questionable and a Democratic win is suspicious. I've made numerous references on this very show that at this point, the only way Republicans really win elections is by cheating. And part of that cheating is instilling doubts in the American electorate. And yet more projection, where they are pushing this narrative that the Democrats are cheating in elections, when the reality is that they are the ones engaging in election malfeasance. But that way they can say, oh, we're not the cheaters. Those guys, they're the cheaters. It's not a coincidence that despite the fact there is an incredibly small amount of verifiable cases of voter fraud, the majority of the verified cases are Republicans committing the voter fraud. But if you ask the average Republican voter, they would tell you that, oh no, it's the Democrats. Those are cheaters. They're all about voter fraud. Because that's what they've been told. And therefore, that is what they believe, despite the fact that that does not reflect the actual reality. Republicans want their voters to question every election where they lose, but to never question and blindly believe every time they win. You don't need proof. Just trust what you believe instinctually. And if it seems like there's no evidence, it's because it's just that well hidden. That mindset of blindly trusting your feelings over the facts is a dangerous one heading into a midterm election where Republicans are looking at possibly losing their majority control in both the House and Senate, leaving Republicans and the administration essentially politically crippled for an indeterminate amount of time, assuming Democrats then go on to win the presidency in the next presidential election. So, of course, facing this prospect, instead of possibly toning down the rhetoric that makes them so unpopular to avoid it, they instead want to demonize the other side so that the voters feel like when Republicans lose, there's something suspicious going on. And it's not just that the Republicans were less popular and the Democrats won legitimately. And we already have historical precedent for what happens when out of control election denialism reaches its extreme conclusion. January 6, 2021 showed us what happens when it turns violent and extreme words become violent actions. It's not to say the Republicans are considering fomenting yet another insurrection on the nation's capital and have another January 6th. They do want the mindset that led to it to remain. The idea that they have to fight, maybe not physically this time, against the tyranny of the Democrats because they are the true winners. And if they lose, it's because it was stolen from them, not because they genuinely lost. Encouraging a mindset where losing is inconceivable is calculated but dangerous when Republicans are set to lose very hard in the upcoming elections. Losing with grace is something they should encourage, not discourage. I can't think of a single time a losing Democratic candidate tried to convince their constituents that they had lost because of some sort of fraud or trick by Republicans and that their loss was not legitimate, even if sometimes they may actually believe that it wasn't, because election denialism and conspiracy theories are not something that Democrats embrace. If they lose an election, they accept it, concede, and move on. They don't try to convince people that there was some sort of suspicious thing going on, and maybe there should be an investigation into why they didn't win when they feel that they should have. Spencer Pratt didn't lose his bid to be LA mayor because of some sort of conspiracy or Democrat tricks or voter fraud or anything of the sort. He lost because California voters decided that they wanted the other two candidates more than they wanted him. That's it. He was the least popular and voted for candidate out of the three people running for the position. But far too many on the right either do not believe this reality or are told that they shouldn't believe it, that there's something to question and be suspicious over, when the reality is there is not. And the truth is he was running to be mayor of LA, a Democrat city, which will now have two Democrats running for the position. The fact that he was not able to make traction there is not suspicious, it's completely expected. But it's painfully clear what they're actually doing. They're setting the denialism stage elections and Republican election losses. We've already seen it crop up when discussing potential candidates for the California governor. They want the mindset to be the only legitimate win is a Republican win, and a Democratic win is always suspicious, shady, or there's some sort of conspiracy going on. And with there being a lot of upcoming Republican losing likely to happen, that's a dangerous mindset to be encouraging. So I guess that's something to watch going forward. But at the very least, one thing we don't have to watch is Spencer Pratt declare victory in becoming the next mayor of Los Angeles. Alright guys, that'll be it for this episode of A Slice of News. I've been your host, Mr. Slice, and until next time when I cut you off another slice of news. And don't forget to rate and review the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find it.
Thank you.